Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose. You know, as this episode airs, we have just come across the 1-year anniversary of shelter in place and when COVID really hit and changed our lives forever. And as I reflect upon this past year, there's so many things that I just wanted to talk about today. Just some things that are on my mind, things that I've been talking with clients about as we kind of use this anniversary as a bit of a root marker in our lives for reflection, as well as how we begin to have re-entry into our new post-COVID world now that vaccines are becoming more and more accessible. And hopefully in the upcoming months, we will have a society in which the vaccines will have been widely spread and creating more of that immunity that we're looking for. And as we, watch in the news every day, there still is a lot of anxiety-provoking information that can make us still stay very fearful around the variants and how long are the effects of the vaccines and all of the unknowns. And it is such a reminder to me to always come back to the foundation and the tools of mindfulness. And this is why I love and I'm so passionate about teaching mindfulness. And most importantly for me, living a mindful life, because having these frameworks, having these tools to draw upon or to fall back upon when I am most stuck or struggling or anxious or in fear or just not knowing how to engage in the unknown gives me some ease and peace and calm as I know what to do with these thoughts and these emotions that can otherwise, make me feel untethered, make me feel ungrounded or unrooted in not knowing what to hold on to. And I think that that is the very thing that so many people felt when COVID hit. Is we have no working model to know what to do with this. This is such a huge unknown in our lifetime. This is something that, we read about in, science fiction books, or we see in post-apocalyptic movies of, or maybe even present day movies in which there's viruses that take over the worldwide population. And so while we always knew it was a possibility, I think there's this naive invincibility in which we have easily felt like it's possible, but it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to affect me or my life. And we know very well that that's just not true anymore. And that even if you have not been personally been affected with the health issue regarding COVID, it has most certainly impacted every aspect of how we live our everyday lives. And one of the things that I've been saying since the very beginning of COVID is whatever was once under a flashlight of awareness is now under a floodlight of awareness. And what I mean by that is whatever we just had keeping, kind of at bay or just under the surface level of our consciousness, maybe some little grumblings of issues that we were able to manage by doing the things that we knew how to do, which for so many of us was staying busy and staying distracted. And by distracted, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We'd go to the gym. We'd go out with girlfriends for girls' night out. We'd go out with the guys for Taco Tuesday. We'd get in the car and we'd go to a sporting event or to a concert or go away for the weekend or go fly to go see family, right? So all of the things that we would normally do to keep us busy and distracted from having to really look at ourselves and look at the things that maybe we don't want to be facing. A lot of those opportunities for healthy and unhealthy distraction were compromised. And so what we were left with was to sit with ourselves. There was really nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. If you were feeling anxious, sad, depressed, angry, fearful, you kind of had to just learn to sit with it because there was nowhere to go. You couldn't even necessarily go to your therapist in person. And, I, as a therapist, my entire practice is now virtual. And sometimes I have clients calling me from the privacy of their cars or on a walk because that is the only place where they can get some privacy and out of the house, away from perhaps the other people that they're most struggling with. So there was a lot of challenges because, again, what was once under a flashlight of awareness was then under a floodlight of awareness. We could no longer run and hide from the things that we needed to face. And I actually saw this as the universe's call to humanity to say, hey, guys, it's time to wake up. It's time to slow down. It's time to get really intentional on how you want to be living your life, and really intentional to let go of the patterns in which you've been living that you think have been working for you, but perhaps under some greater introspection, maybe haven't been the best ways to be living your life. So, in this episode, I'm going to be asking you guys a lot of questions. This is really an opportunity for you to reflect. And I'm also going to be giving you some tools on how we begin to move forward. But I want to just start off with the question of see if you can rewind your memory, because as this episode comes live on a Monday morning, would have been the first Monday morning in which our kids did not go to school. And I know for so many parents and kids alike, this threw everyone into one of two camps. There was either the, oh my God, this is like the best staycation I can ever have imagined. We don't have to have really any structure or routine in the home. Let's just watch Netflix until 2 a.m. Let's stay up late baking bread if we can be lucky enough to have found flour. And let's just take this as like a big time off. Because at that time, 2 years ago today, we thought it was going to be like 2 or 3 weeks that we were going to be on this great pause. Little did we know that a year later, many of our kids still are not back in school. Many of us are still working from home. That, even in different pockets of the country or the world where there may be some return to normalcy, it's still it wasn't the way it was, because there's masks, there's distancing, there's protocols. It's far from anything but normal. But I know, as I'm talking to you now, my kids who were in high school, as I live here in California, their school hasn't been able to go back for any hybrid option yet. So for many of us, it's exactly as it was a year ago, except the difference is we've had to learn how to live with it. So as I was saying, that first Monday after COVID shutdown and shelter in place occurred, there was one of two camps. There was, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. It's a staycation. I get to just stay in my pajamas. Why would I ever put on a pair of jeans ever again? Who cares if I do my hair and makeup, or even possibly even shower every day if I'm not seeing anybody and I'm certainly not going out anywhere? Or there was the other camp, which was kind of a lot of panic and fear. Perhaps it's because maybe your home isn't a super safe environment. Maybe your job had no possibility of being able to work from home, and you either were on a front line risking your health and the health of your loved ones, or perhaps you got furloughed and you didn't even have an opportunity to work anymore. Perhaps you no longer had an easy ability to pay the bills. And maybe you have special needs kids who you require on those greater assistance from teachers and aides that you no longer could provide. And so for many, many, many people, even if there was a short-lived, oh, this is going to be the best vacation, directly underneath of that was, holy shit, how are we going to do this? Logistically, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, like there was a lot of things that we had to figure out. And as evidence that I know how hard it was, my client load doubled during the time of COVID. And I have never been so grateful to be in a career, to be in such service in which I can truly, I always knew I could provide the tools that people need, but now it was as if they needed them more than ever. And again, I'm so grateful to have a mindfulness practice that helped me stay centered and stay sane and stay mindful, as well as being able to help guide others in how to do that. So again, like I said, just take a moment and pause and reflect on, where were you at a year ago right now? What were you thinking? Because at the end of the episode, we're going to do some present moment reflection on where are you now. But let's start just by beginning where you were, what the dynamic was. as I'm talking, see if you can even pay attention or tune into any sensations arising in your body, any emotions that you're experiencing as you recall this, or any thoughts going through your head. Just notice how even as we can recall a memory, we can tap into and attune into that emotional experience now. So when COVID did hit, and I would draw upon the tools of mindfulness to teach my clients, I want to go over some of those things now, just as reminders, because we're still not living in a sense of known normalcy. And I think this, in fact, is the most important thing that we can do in moving forward, is be really aware of the language in which we're using, of how we re-engage with both our mindset and the language around how are we going to return to this post-COVID world. And if you listened to my episode a few weeks ago on communication, you will know that I think language is really powerful. Language holds an immense amount of power to relate to our own experience. And the more negatively we think about something and say those negative words in our own minds, the more negative of experience we're going to have. It's just that simple. But if we can be really mindful of and aware of the language in which that we're saying to ourselves and others, that can help shape our experiences to help create one of greater ease, greater resiliency, greater calm, greater adaptability, and greater presence. And so, I hear a lot of people talk about, oh, when life goes back to normal, when it goes back to normal, when schools are back to normal, when work is back to normal, when travel's back to normal. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, you guys, but it's not going to be back to normal. And in fact, that's actually okay. Because my guess is we thought things were great. And yet I imagine in this big pause and the great slowdown of 2020, in which we had no choice but to endure, perhaps we noticed some things about our own lives that maybe weren't as great in the way that we were living them. For example, I've always prided myself on how much I can accomplish in a day and how I can be efficient in, not just my chores or my work, but from getting to point A to point B. And let me tell you, I am thrilled not to have to be stopping and starting my car 6 to 8 times a day. Now, as a mom, I've always been the one to drive my kids everywhere. I've never been part of a carpool, and I hold great value of that time in the car with my kids. But the mere fact of just having to go to so many places, I didn't realize the extent to which that exhausted me, emotionally and physically exhausted me. I'm much happier and more peaceful being more still and not being so busy. So I don't want to go back to that old normal. I need to find a way to create a greater ease throughout my day, because the shift it's made for me mentally and emotionally has been huge. And I otherwise, despite COVID, would have never slowed down to even recognize that doing anything other than that pattern was even an option. So I want to just go through some tools that, as a foundation in mindfulness, is going to help with any challenge you're facing. And, we are still facing this COVID world. And I invite you to consider how this not only relates to the greater society in which and world we're living in, but also in your day-to-day moments of struggle and hardship and overwhelm and anxiety and pressure and stress and all the things that get in the way of us truly just being able to be. Okay, so just right off the bat, before we even just go delve further into the foundations of those tools, the one thing I want to say is when I think about going back to normal, I think about post 9/11, and how we traveled before 9/11, how we traveled afterwards was completely different. And I know after 9/11, I thought, how am I ever going to step on a plane again? And it took time. And those first few times I did so were a little bit more anxious still than I ever had previously been. And then it became just a new habit of how we engaged in travel. It became not the same and it wasn't normal, but we adapted. And so I do believe that we are going to continue to adapt in the same way, because we really have no choices but to continue to adapt. Okay, I just want to put that thing aside. So when I talk about the foundations of mindfulness, what am I referring to? Well, all the things that help us reduce our own suffering. So I'm referring to having non-attachment to the outcome, being able to decrease expectations, because we know that expectations are the quickest path to suffering. Your ability to stay present versus getting stuck and ruminating the past or having the mind wander too much and too far into the future. It's getting out of the comparison mind. Because all of these things, when we attach to a particular outcome, and that outcome may or may not be within our control, and when we hold a strong attachment to how we want things to look, and things don't always turn out that way, we struggle, we suffer. We say, why me? Why this? Why can't I do this? Why is this so hard? And then we go into comparison mind with the assumption that it's easier for other people, not knowing what's the inner workings of their own minds. And, we think that we're staying present because we are trying to focus on what's here and now. And yet, if you're like me, your mind is going to wander. And it's going to continue to wander to the past and again to the future and to all of those what ifs. So I invite you, if it's helpful to take notes, to just think about how you engage with the practice of non-attachment, how you manage your own expectations, how do you do at staying present and being aware of what's arising in the here and now. And when I talk about mindfulness, I'm generally referring it to as an attention of mind practice. It's noticing where your mind's attention is resting and asking yourself if it's serving you. And if it's not, then knowing how to switch your mind's attention to somewhere that will serve you. What does it look like for you to get stuck in comparison mind? Is that something you do often? Are you even aware of it? Are you comparing yourself to others that you see online, influencers or people who are only posting the positive, good things in their lives and not showing the whole range and the whole picture? Are you comparing to friends and family? So just having a greater awareness of your habits and patterns. As I always say, you can't change what you're not aware of. So the greater ability you have to notice where you struggle in these different areas, the greater ability you'll have to notice when they're arising so you can intentionally choose a new response to it. Because as I always say, mindfulness is about responding versus reacting to whatever is arising in the present moment. So as an antidote to all those struggles, of course, I'm going to talk about gratitude. I'm so proud of my book that I wrote right in the height of the summer of 2020, right in the height of the pandemic, as we were all engaging with political and civil unrest. So I know for me, writing that book gave me a great focus to place my mind's attention when all of this chaos was arising around us. And so I know I've talked a lot about gratitude on the podcast, and I'm going to continue because I think it's something we need to continue to cultivate. But when I talk about gratitude, as we reflect upon this now entire year of COVID, I would invite you to consider, what would you say have been some of the greatest gifts that COVID has taught you? Because it's really, really, really easy to dwell in what COVID took away from us. It took away a lot of our freedoms, our opportunities, our plans, our options, our ability to hug our friends and our family, our ability to travel. Like, it took away school for kids and summer camps and after school activities in person. Like, COVID took away a lot. And if you dwell in that frustration, in that negativity, in that anger, in that resentment, it's going to build inside of you and it's going to show up in different areas. And I also believe there are an immense amount of gifts that COVID taught us. So what are some of the gifts that you received? I know from what I hear from my clients, as well as in my own life, that the gift of extra time with our kids has been amazing, especially if you've got teenagers who at this age and stage are likely, focused on their peers as their main social life. And with that being compromised, again, we got to turn into a family unit that for many families was a gift of time. Yes, I was devastated for my daughter when her opportunities for camp and going abroad for the semester were canceled, but that was 6 extra months I got to be with my 16 and now 17-year-old daughter that I otherwise wouldn't have had. You know, the countless game nights, the countless opportunities for cooking and baking and, finding shows that we all bonded over. That gift is priceless. It truly, truly is. And while I know not every family situation and home situation is safe and connected, hopefully you were able to find the gifts, maybe even in your own alone time, that you were able to appreciate that maybe you've been too busy to appreciate before. So multiple gifts of COVID, highlighting the patterns that weren't working for you. Perhaps it helps you narrow down your social circle of, when it comes at the end of the day, who are the people I most need to connect with? If we've stayed busy before just to stay busy, we might not have been as mindful or conscious about where our energy has gone and who the people we've spent it with. But I know my mindfulness practice has taught me to be really conscious of my energy and who I can be around that fills me up and who kind of depletes me. And so to be aware of that unapologetically, so I know how to nurture myself and my own needs. So what are the lessons that you learned during COVID? I mean, I've always said you have a 100% success rate of getting through everything you never thought you could. So I know there is not one person who is not alive and breathing on this planet right now who isn't a little bit more of aware of their resilience and ability to adapt than they were a year ago. And that is huge because, I talk to a lot of parents who have been struggling and suffering with a lot of anxiety over what their kids aren't learning in school and feeling like our kids are going to be behind. And the reminder is that, well, it's a cohort. So if one is behind, we're all behind. We're all in different boats, but we're all in the same storm, right? We're going through it differently, but everyone is affected. And so, yes, we can focus on the academic skills that our kids haven't gotten in this past year, but I would venture to say that the life skills that they've had no choice but to learn are going to take them further than any academic year could ever have gotten them, as far as being a well-rounded, secure person. Because that is what life is about. At the end of the day, how you do in school, what you learned in 5th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade is important, but in the end of the day of your life, it doesn't really matter. But how you communicate to yourself and others in times of needs, how you manage struggle, how you deal with sadness, depression, anger, fear, the unknown. We've all got such a massive life lesson in this. And if you haven't realized yet how big of a lesson this is to have learned, I invite you to just consider this is huge. This is going to be the thing that really, I believe, shapes our next generation for creative problem solving. I mean, what kids have been able to learn of what we can do virtually is going to only, grow exponentially when we are back together in person, because we've had to be creative. So, perhaps as we go through this, as I'm calling it kind of this anniversary of COVID, continue to talk with your family. Ask your kids, as you look back on this year, not dwelling on the negative, what are some of the positives that you truly are grateful for? And as I round out kind of the things on my mind that I wanted to share today, it's something that I talk about when I'm leading retreats, which I am really excited because I have booked some dates for this coming fall of 2021 that I think we are safely going to be able to gather. I'm bringing a group of ladies to Maryvale in Tucson, Arizona. Check out the show notes for more information so you can see if you can get on the opportunity. It's going to be a very short list because I already have people held spots from last year. But, when we have these experiences that are deep and meaningful, one of the things that we don't always know is how to go about the reentry. And even though, COVID has been a retreat of sorts, because we've had a retreat from our everyday lives, and we've had to have some greater solitude and alone time. And obviously our patterns and habits have been forced to change. But I've heard from many people that there's a lot of uncertainty that they're holding around when, quote, the world opens back up, how are they going to engage in it? How are they going to feel comfortable in social situations and around groups of people? Even if you've had your vaccine, around other vaccinated people, how are you going to feel comfortable not being in a mask? How are you going to feel when you don't, have practice in just chit chat and conversation and eye contact? What about how are you going to, have a salutation with somebody? If it used to be a handshake, maybe in a formal way, what does the now post-COVID world handshake look like? Is it an elbow bump? Is it a fist bump? What about hugging and just touching? And what about things that you would maybe not think of, sharing food with people around a table? I know one of the things we've been talking about recently, it was just my daughter's birthday recently, was, are we ever going to blow out candles on a birthday cake again? Like, that just seems so unhealthy in our COVID world. So there's a lot of things that we've got to consider about this re-entry and how we plan on engaging with others in ways that are going to feel safe as we kind of bumble around to find our way, to figure out what is appropriate, to figure out this awkwardness of re-engaging with others. So I hope that you've had a few moments to consider some things that maybe you hadn't considered in the past year. I know that the more you can increase awareness of your triggers, awareness of your thoughts, of your emotions, awareness of where you get stuck, the greater ability you have of more mindfully managing your way through. And I'm hoping that this episode has helped you visit some of those things, that as we begin to open back up and as we begin to experience some level of re-entry to this new normal post-COVID world, what's that going to look like for you? And I just want to leave you with the thought that intentional living, being conscious, being aware, getting off of autopilot, living your life on purpose in alignment with your values, what's important and what feels good to you, is going to be the best guide to get you through how we go through these changes. Because if we just automatically assume and go back to autopilot, we're going to find our way back to being stuck in ways that we have otherwise been unstuck for quite some time. And I know that getting unstuck is a possibility. And I know that we have the ability to change our habits and change our patterns. So to be really mindful as you move forward in this post-COVID world, don't just jump back into the same old routine. Because my guess is that routine, much of it worked and a lot of it didn't. And so it's not like we just have to go back to the way things were, because they are not the same. And I don't know that we're ever going to get such an immense opportunity to have hit pause on our lives so we can realign our values, realign our goals, realign with our intentions, to ask ourselves the questions, how do I want to be living my life? Because I have the chance to re-engage in a new way on purpose. So I hope that you found this episode valuable. I can't believe it was a whole year since shelter in place began. And if you have questions, if this is bringing up stuff in you, please reach out to me. Let me know on social media. Send me an email. I'd love to connect with you, because I am continuing my mission, my purpose, my intentions to being in service and being a guide for those who are feeling stuck. Because I know that the journey forward is possible. Even with the smallest of steps, we can get to a life lived with alignment, one in which we can experience with greater peace, calm, joy, and authenticity. So thanks so much for tuning in today, you guys. And if you're interested in joining me in Marival in September, please check out the show notes to see if the cart has been opened for you to sign up. And I have the possibility of opening a second week if there is enough excitement and opportunity for people who want to join me. I can only take 11 with me at a time. So it's going to be really limited options. But I know that I have been craving not just travel, but I've been craving self-care. I've been craving massage. I've been craving relaxation. I've been craving self-nurturing, because I know for COVID, I've been giving, and I'm looking forward to leading this retreat. So I have the opportunity to really replenish a little bit. So I know so many women are in that same boat, where we feel the void of replenishment, of we haven't been able to recharge and renew our spirit. So if it speaks to you as we move forward in this post-COVID world, to renew and recharge your spirit, I would love for you to join me. And even if it's not in Marival, continue to follow me on social media. Hopefully you've subscribed to the podcast. If it speaks to you, I would really be honored with a rating and review so we can spread the word of to more people to journey forward. I also have my new Instagram to go with the podcast, just at Journey Forward with Jory Rose, all one word. Help me spread the word. Every day I'm posting different snippets and different quotes and different great reminders and tools from each of these amazing episodes. All right, you guys, take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.